how I'm using kind of a sandwich method, or what I like referring to as a sandwich method. When I'm doing mixed media, all that means is that I'm using one medium, then I'm switching to another medium, then I'm going back to the first medium to finish the piece up. So I started with colored pencil, I moved on to watercolor washes, and now I'm going back to the colored pencil. All right. So I have my colored pencils right here that I have chosen for this piece. And I'm not going to be using any other colored pencils. I already have more than enough right here. So I'm going to set this aside. These are just Prismacolor wax-based soft core colored pencils right here, by the way, if you're curious. And the watercolor paint that I used was from Winsor & Newton's professional line. So I'm going to set my colored pencils, or the rest of my colored pencils, aside because I'm not going to be using them. And I'm just going to start. I'm going to start with this. The objective with this third part of the process is to add more detail, and it's also to darken shadow areas. That's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to just get started with that. And if you guys have any questions or anything that you'd like to share, do let me know in the chat. That is kind of what I'm here for, to get to know you guys and help you out in whatever way it is that I can. Okay, so let me just see if things are working okay. Okay, things seem to be okay over on YouTube. So I'm just gonna start. Oh, you know what I'm missing? I'm missing my sharpener. Where's my sharpener? I want to encourage you guys to just work on some art of your own. What are you guys working on? Let me know. I'd love to know. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what you're working on. Are you currently working on any self-initiated art projects? Laura, hi! It's nice to see you again. I'm just getting started. Just getting started. Nice to see you. And welcome everyone that is making it into the room. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world, and whatever time it is for you. I hope you're well. I hope you've had some time to work on your art this week. It's been kind of a busy few days for me, and it's good to have some time to just sit down and do some fun stuff. Horsewoman, good to hear that. I'm glad that everything is working okay now. Okay, so for me, this last part of my process involves essentially adding more detail and adding more contrast into those darkest dark areas, the shadowy areas, essentially. And Laura, I know that you were here last time. I was telling others how this is a personal project that I am working on this year, where my objective is to just improve my art and evolve it and make it more my own and see where it goes. Let's see, Laura. I'm drawing a mushroom house village. Oh my god, that sounds so much fun. Sounds like so much fun. You're from Puerto Rico. That's amazing. Massachusetts. That's a long distance, long way away from Puerto Rico. Must have been like a huge difference for you. I don't know how long you've been living in Massachusetts, but that's cool. That's awesome. I live in Santiago, Nuevo León, Mexico. I used to live in Monterrey, but not anymore. Almost all my life I lived in Monterrey. So, what are you guys currently doing to like improve as artists, whether it's your skills or anything at all? Like any because as artists, we all have like little weaknesses or areas of opportunity that we can continue developing our skills with or in. Is there anything that you're working on? Like, I don't know, for example, for a while for me, it was my way of drawing hands. I was super scared of drawing hands and used to always hide the person's forearms and hands behind their backs when I was drawing figures so that I didn't have to draw hands. Um, and so for a while, I made it my objective to draw all sorts of hands from all sorts of different angles and perspectives and just fill up sketchbook pages with hands. And I'm so happy that I did because it improved my hand drawings tremendously. And I was able to kind of develop a process for drawing hands that I still use to the day to draw basically any hand pose. So, cannot recommend. Just if there's anything that you want to improve on that you feel will take your art to the next level, just dedicate time and energy to that. What you focus on is what will ultimately grow. And I think it's so important that as artists, we practice self evaluation consistently so that we're able to acknowledge those kind of weak areas or just things that we can do to improve our art and practice consciously and strategically so that we can evolve faster, develop our skills faster. I'm having lots of fun creating these little pieces in my sketchbook, and I've been very pleased with the paper in this sketchbook. It's watercolor paper and it's not 100% cotton, but it's holding up very well. So I'm not having any issues with painting directly opposite to the piece in the back, if that makes sense. So I'm painting on both sides. The paper is not buckling and warping in weird ways as I am doing those watercolor washes. And I am using quite a bit of water when I'm creating those washes. So I've been very pleased. I got it via Amazon. I was a little bit scared that the paper wouldn't hold up, especially because it's not 100% cotton. But no, it's working pretty well. Let's see. Um, okay, let's see. I want to add other mediums to my watercolor art. Like what you're doing now, adding colored pencils. I want to add colored brush pens on top of my work. Ooh, colored brush pens. That could lead to very interesting effects, Laura. I would love to see how that looks. And you should give it a go. Totally give it a go. By the way, Laura, if you're not following me on Instagram, please do and send me a message, either a DM or just comment on one of my posts or whatever, and I'll follow you back. Okay, I want to know, like, or if you're sharing your work, of course, I'd love to see it. Oh, and you'll find me on Instagram at, like, my handle is Erica underscore Lancaster underscore art or artist, creating little shadows here. So what I'm doing for these pieces, at least for these, in the beginning of my sketchbook, is I'm doing a little kind of a scene, whether it's an indoor scene or an outdoor scene, and then I'm doing like a little still life or a painting of an object that has to do with that scene. But I really want to do other pieces where it's just like the interior of a coffee shop, or I want to draw and paint more cars as well for practice. So those will be fun. Absolutely, Laura. Yes. I'd love to connect with you over there. I've been a lot more active on Instagram this year. I've been making more of an effort to share helpful content over there. So if anyone is interested, Erica underscore Lancaster underscore, I think artist. It's always art or artist. I'm on Pinterest, I think it's art. And then Facebook and Instagram, I'm pretty sure it's artist. I wanted to give these little lights a glow effect. So when I was painting this with watercolor, I made sure to paint the blue section nice and quick and then drop in the yellow on top of the blue while it was still wet to get that nice kind of blurred wet on wet effect. And it turned out pretty nice. So this paper is also good for wet on wet effects. Yeah, Instagram is tough. It's very tough nowadays. But I try not to stress myself out about it. Just do what I can when I can. I also created little light effects right here in the windows. And I used raw sienna for the little light effects over my gray. So what I did was I created my gray using a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That is my favorite way to create grays, mixing together brown and blue. Like approximately a 50% amount of each, just mixing approximately that amount is going to get you gray. So I painted in the gray and then I dropped in a little bit of raw sienna over that to get those nice soft wet on wet effects. Switch on over to, no, let's That's a good one for my little stools. And by the way, what I'm doing for these is like I'm getting very loosely inspired by reference photos, and I'm changing a lot of the photo. So it's like I'm working from imagination maybe 40%, and I'm using information from the photo maybe 60%. And what I did for this specific one, it was actually a pretty cool process because I combined two photos. So the uh, the main facade design of the pub or the restaurant was from one photo, and then this top part was from another. So good luck finding this photo online. That's how you steal like an artist. You combine stuff. Okay, I need to add a little bit more of a darker green value in these little plants, make them pop with some darker green. I also want to create little details, maybe little marks. I was using this poppy red Prismacolor for my flowers, and I need my greens. So I think this dark green is going to be a good one to add a little bit more depth to these flowers. It's incredible what you just bringing in a little bit of a darker value of that same color can do to create more depth. And I'm not going for a super realistic look here, more of an expressive style with these pieces. I'm kind of done with the realism. I'm bored with it. I'm bored with realism. Okay. You guys have any questions at all that you would like my input on? Let me know. I'd be happy to help you out. Anything that you want to know on drawing, on painting with watercolor, productivity, motivation, anything at all. Just going to add some marks here. Yeah. Yeah, the colored pencil details definitely add a pop and more detail, a little bit more definition as well. Even though I'm not trying to outline things, especially not at this point in the process, what I'm thinking of mostly are like little shadow shapes. I'm not trying to outline, I'm trying to create shadow shapes, like irregular shadow shapes. In the beginning, in the first part of the process, I was trying to outline. So this is essentially my next one. And what I'm doing for each one of these is first I am drawing the two things or the scene freehand with a pencil. And then after that, I bring in my colored pencils. And in that part of the process, I am kind of tracing around elements and shapes that I've drawn. And then after that, I bring in watercolor and I kind of create my loose washes and I fill in areas and create little effects. I allow that to dry completely, and then I do what I am doing now with this one over here, which is adding more detail and depth and sometimes texture to the piece. So there is a point in the process where I am, I guess you could say, outlining, but at the end, what I want to create, like in this part of the process, are more like shadow shapes than outlines. Okay, so let's move on to this blue. Did I use indigo? No, I didn't use indigo for this one. I used indigo for another one. I'm going to add a little bit more of a shadow effect here. Bulldog clips. I think though that's the way that you call these types of clips, bulldog clips. They're very helpful, but sometimes it can get in the way. But yeah, I'm having so much fun with this project, and I am so happy that I got it started. Because, in all honesty, I was getting a little bit just a little frustrated with my art. I hit like a plateau, and I wasn't having too much fun with it anymore. So I really wanted to do something different and reignite my excitement, my passion for art, and this is like what I do. It's worked for me several times throughout my journey where when I have hit a type of plateau, just start a self-initiated project that will help with that. And oftentimes, if you haven't checked out my video on setting parameters, it's exactly what I do. So in that video, I share exactly how I establish parameters and why establishing parameters can be so helpful to level up your art. Doesn't matter where you are currently in your journey. It's a very helpful strategy that can definitely help. If you haven't checked it out, I would highly, highly recommend it. You'll find it on my channel. It's one of my last videos. How I improve my art or something like that is what I call that video. How I'm improving my art this year or something like that. You'll find it. It's one of the last ones. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna bring in a little bit of blue down here just because this way I can integrate colors a little bit more, create a little bit more color harmony in the piece. And color harmony is always something that I am thinking about. Um, I don't know if you've ever been through this, but like, for example, when I was first getting started on my journey with painting, I'm gonna move on to this one now. But when I was first getting started with painting, what I was doing is I was just bringing in random colors out of whim as I was painting. So instead of taking 5 minutes to plan the colors that I would be using to make sure that I am repeating colors throughout the piece, either repeating that same color in a different section or different element, or by bringing in the same color into different color mixtures. I was just randomly choosing, like bringing in different blues, bringing in different reds. And then at the end of my painting process, I was always very underwhelmed with my results. I was like, well, my drawing is okay. And the composition, like the arrangement of elements, is interesting. But this still looks very amateurish. Like there is something very not necessarily incongruent, but it wasn't showing the level of cohesiveness or integration, I should say, that is very important for something to look more professional when it comes to art. So if you're not planning your colors that you're going to be bringing into your piece, if you're not giving thought to the color scheme that you're going to be using, and as I said before, how you're going to be repeating colors throughout your pieces, I would highly, highly recommend starting to set aside at least 5 to 10 minutes before starting with a new piece to pre-select the colors that you're going to be bringing in, and that's going to make a huge difference. Everything at the end is going to look a lot more harmonious and cohesive, just because you took time to choose your colors and you gave time to just you thought about how you would be repeating colors throughout the piece. Makes a huge difference. I need to add more shadows to these fries. See how by darkening a plane or a section of these fries, I'm kind of giving the fries more of a 3D look. By adding that shadow section, I start using my gray. And I'm a big believer in using a limited color, a limited amount of colors. Um, Oftentimes, a lot of beginners think that the more colors you have, the better something is going to be, but it's the opposite. It's when you're able to create depth and interest and just great color effects using a limited amount of colors that you show that you're more like that you know about color theory, that you're skilled with color, and that at the end the results look a lot more harmonious and more cohesive. So the fewer amount of colors that so as a rule of thumb, what I like doing is like, when I'm choosing my colors, if there is any color that I feel that I don't need, I'll just take it out, right? And of course, this requires you understanding color theory, knowing about the color wheel, etc. But just as a rule of thumb, if there is any color that you can take it out. If I have colors that are very similar in value or in hue, I take it out. I don't need it, right? Why have it there to begin with? Okay, so where was I? I was creating a little bit more depth. Grab my reference and see how values are working in this section. I'm going to darken this section more. Maybe I'll bring in my white paint pen for the little sesame seeds. My reference doesn't even have sesame seeds. I just added them because I thought it would be a nice detail. I'm gonna add a little tiny shadow section under some of these sesame seeds to make them pop. And in a bit, I think I'll bring in my white paint pen. I think if I bring in my white paint pen, the sesame seeds will be a little bit more visible than if I went in with my white Prismacolor pencil. Going in and creating shadow areas under the lettuce. Okay, I need my dark green again. Need to create some shadow areas in the lettuce. I haven't had a burger in a while. I had pizza last night though. I think the last burger I had was in this place in town called Burger Time, and it's awesome because it has a Back to the Future theme. It's like a diner, and it's themed everything to do with Back to the Future, like hung up on walls, and it's very fun. And the burgers are great. I'm glad it was helpful, Laura. Yes, definitely do it and let me know how it goes. Even just taking 5 minutes to think about color can make a huge difference in the outcome of your work. Let's see. But yeah, growing on Instagram right now is so hard. Requires so much time and so much consistency, and it's like, you're always thinking like, am I supposed to be devoting my time to this and not to creating art? Like, where does the art creation time fit into all of this, right? It's crazy. It takes a lot of time. And sometimes I get super frustrated. I don't know if this has happened to you, but I'm like about to share a reel or something. And for some strange reason, like all of a sudden, the post has uploaded and then it's missing the music that I kind of set, right? Or my little text inserts or whatever they're called are sometimes like they change, their little background changes, or the letters just show up funny. It's kind of annoying because I have to like redo it all over again. It's glitchy is what I'm saying, and it's very frustrating because if you've already uploaded something once and there's a glitch that makes it show up incorrectly, you have to do it all over again. So it's more wasted time. It's kind of very frustrating. I need to go back to my lighter green and create a little bit of a transition because there's a lot of contrast between my lighter green and my darker green that I just placed. I just want that to look a little bit softer, more gradual. So going back to my lighter green. I want to make the cheese pop a little bit more. So I'm going to sharpen this color. This is goldenrod. So I'm going to use it to add some shadows into the cheese, make it pop a little bit more. Just a couple little cheesy sections down here. There you go. I don't want to completely cover up my watercolor when I'm going in with my colored pencil. That is definitely something that I am trying not to do, because if I go in and cover up all of my watercolor, then what's the point of having gone in with watercolor, right? It's just sometimes, I don't know if this has happened to you, but we just add and add and add, and we don't stop to come back and see everything as a whole, to ask ourselves, like, is more detail really necessary? And we just keep adding and adding. But sometimes what happens is that we go overboard with the amount of description or detail, and we just overwork the piece. So I don't want to do that. I just want to add a little bit more detail, a little bit more contrast and depth. I need to work on those tomatoes a little bit. Where are the shadow areas? Maybe add in some lines for the onion, a little bit more detail, and then a little bit of shadow. Okay, so I've added more detail to all of the elements, I think, except for the it's not a napkin, it's like a piece of paper, parchment paper. I don't know if that's the right term. Maybe just a tiny bit more detail and texture into the bun with this lighter brown. And I'm gonna grab my white paint pen. I like these. These are Jelly Roll pens from Sakura, and these are um, 0.8 tip size. I like making sure that the ink is coming out correctly before going into my piece. So you can see it there. All right, let's see. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee, check out the chat here. Yeah, totally get it, Laura. Um, 5 likes, but I don't care. Yes. Yeah. I think the best thing that you can do, Laura, is just do it because, you know, out of fun. Because otherwise, you're not going to stay consistent with it, right? If you just see it as like, something that's not fun, something that you have to do because of X, Y, or Z. So let's see. All this effort with minimal payback. Yeah. Yep. Totally get it. Let's see if I can make those little sesame seeds pop a little with my white paint pen. Yeah, I think we can see them more. So right above the section where I just created a little bit of a shadow effect with my brown, I'm just doing a little scribbling motion. And the objective here is not to like fill in a little shape for the sesame seed, but what I'm doing right here with my paint pen would be more of the highlight in the sesame seed, not the sesame seed shape, like not the entire sesame seed, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to create the highlight for the sesame seed. Maybe the tomato and onion have a bit of a highlight in them as well. I wonder if maybe creating a little bit of a highlight shape in the little light bulbs could make them pop more. Or maybe this would work better with white gouache, which I do have white gouache. Maybe I can bring in some gouache. This is a mixed media sketchbook after all, so I can do whatever I want. I think the white will make the letters pop a little bit more, as if the letter is raised in the sign. The white gouache would probably be more noticeable. I like using white gouache from Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton's designer's gouache is what I use whenever I am bringing in white gouache detail. But yeah, so I'm almost done with this one. As I said, I don't want to go overboard with the detail. I always want to come back to see everything as a whole and make sure that I'm not overly covering up my my watercolor washes and painterly effects. That is not my objective. Really, Laura? Does it stop working for you? Or does the ink stop coming out? Or why? What don't you like about the white jelly roll? It's hard finding a white pen that you can actually see. Sometimes it is good to just go in with white gouache and a very, very teeny tiny paintbrush. Maybe I should bring in a little bit of a darker brown into some of these fries. Yeah, I think that looks better. It adds more depth to the fries. I was missing a bit of a darker value. Let's see. It skips. Yeah. Yep, I get it. Totally get it. So, do you prefer doing that kind of like last minute highlight type of effect with gouache, or is there anything else that you like using, Laura? Uniball. That's good to know, Laura. I'll check out the Uniball pen. Mhm. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave this one as is. I'm gonna leave it and then I go back in. Yeah, just a tiny bit more yellow into some of these little lights. There. I don't want to do much else and overwork it. But I think what I can do is kind of start this watercolor process with you right now. Maybe I won't finish, but at least I can get started so that you can get a better idea of what I'm doing with the watercolor. Let me just clear my Prismacolor pencils out of the way. I better put it over here so that this doesn't get in the way of my washes, especially the background. Okay, let me just clear the situation here. Give me 1 sec. I need to get my Prismacolor back into the box. Gonna leave these right here. So what I'm doing is I am kind of separating out the Prismacolor pencils that I am using a lot. So essentially, the ones that I keep coming back to with these pieces, I want to make sure that I'm kind of separating them or organizing them in a specific section, because one of my objectives, and this is something that I explained in that one video that I shared, I think a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember, but one of my objectives with the self-initiated project is coming to a specific color scheme that I really like. And a great way to do that is to just allow yourself to pick your colors, right? Before starting each piece. Like, go through the process of picking your colors, as I was kind of suggesting before. But then after you've created a few pieces, notice what colors you keep coming back to, that you keep choosing before starting each piece, because that is very telling about the colors that you personally enjoy and the combinations of colors that you enjoy seeing in your work. And then based on that, you can then, after you've created, I don't know, it could be like 10 pieces. I would recommend at least 10 pieces so that you have a bit of a body of work that you can kind of evaluate. Because otherwise, if you just do like 1 to 3 pieces, it could be more of just what you felt like doing for some reason or another in that given week or month even. But I think if you give yourself enough time, so maybe create a self-initiated project that is going to last for at least 3 months or so, right? 3 to 5 months, 3 to 6 months. It really doesn't matter. I think it depends on the complexity and how large your self-initiated project is and how many pieces you're thinking of creating. But it is important that you create a good amount of pieces and that you give yourself the opportunity to really delve deep. If because sometimes we allow ourselves to get like affected and influenced by trends and things that we see, when that's not really us picking, it's external influences, if that makes sense. So the reason why I say it's so important to give yourself the opportunity to delve deep and to get to know what you want is because, like, the only way to do that is to give yourself enough time. And I think 3 to 6 months would be a good amount of time for you to know if your choices that you're making in terms of color, in terms of effects, in terms of mediums that you're bringing in, all these things is actually is actually your choice. Because as I said, if you just practice things for a couple of weeks, sometimes, we're just influenced by trends, or sometimes we could be picking colors or doing specific things just because maybe we feel a certain way, that week or that couple of weeks, but that's, not necessarily how you're going to feel for the long run, or if you kind of get a farther out perspective, if that makes sense. So for me right now in my journey, it's really important that I kind of develop a solid, unique style that is me, that is fun, that is enjoyable for me, and that I can recreate over and over again with different pieces. And so coming to my kind of color palette that I love is part of that discovery and kind of honing of my voice. And so for me, paying attention to my color choices right now is very, very important. But for you, it could be something else. For you, it could be maybe you're finding your drawing style, right? Maybe you're finding, I don't know, like maybe you're finding your level of, this is something that I see a lot of people like struggle with. Sometimes when you're getting started with any new medium, what I see people do is 1 week they go for like super high levels of realism, and the next week they go for a very loose style. And then they go for something in between, and they're flip-flopping back and forth. So maybe you want to create a self initiated project for yourself where you allow yourself to like create lots of pieces, not being influenced by other people's work, but just giving thought, maybe using reference photos, but not other people's finished pieces. Like use reference photos if you enjoy using reference photos, but don't use other people's finalized pieces as references or inspiration necessarily, because again, you're going to get influenced by their style. Something I see a lot of people kind of misconstrue, or there's this misconception that uh, like using reference photos is cheating or something like that, but it's not cheating. It's a photo. You're creating artwork from a photo, right? And that requires a lot of skill, being able to create artwork from a photo, especially if you're not copying the photo as is, right? So it's one thing to try to copy the photo as is, and it's quite another to make sure that you're bringing yourself into the piece and that you're making compositional choices, such as maybe combining photos like I did with the piece that I just finished, or you're collaging things together, or you're simply taking your own reference photos, or you are using someone else's photos that you have permission to use. Always make sure that you have permission to use the photo, but always think of like what would improve the composition. Would the composition be better if I take this thing out, if I bring this thing in, if I change the location of the focal point, right? All of those things are ways that you can improve the photo to create a better artwork from that photo. Creating art is not just taking the photo as is and trying to copy it. It's asking yourself, how can you improve the composition and how can you bring more of yourself into the piece, right? So at least those are my thoughts about it. But anyway, okay, so those are my personal objectives for this project. It could be any of those things for you, whether it's you also want to discover your own color palette that you like working with, or you want to find your level of realism to abstraction for your next pieces instead of jumping back and forth between loose and high levels of realism and everything in between. Devote 3 to 6 months to creating pieces, not being influenced by the external world. Like isolate yourself to a certain degree, at least. I call it a period of incubation, where the external inputs that you're taking in are very limited, so that you can really delve deeper into yourself and kind of discover and acknowledge what you want to do, like the influences that you personally have and what you like, as opposed to doing things because other people are doing them. I think periods of incubation are very important for artists, but we all have different goals. And so, whatever it is for you, I would recommend kind of establishing and planning a self initiated project, because it's so, so helpful. Give yourself the time to delve deeper into those areas of opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get a water container and a couple of brushes so that I can get started on this piece with you. At least the second phase, which would be the watercolor phase. Okay, let me go ahead and get my water. I'll be right back. All right, so I have my container of water. I've been using these two brushes for my watercolor. I think this one as well. So it's crazy, but both of these are size 14 rounds and they're so different. This one definitely has a longer handle. This one is a short handle, but this one is way kind of pointier at the end, and this one is less pointy or more triangular, and this one is more like curved. Can you see that? And then this is a size 3 round brush that I'm using for very small areas. Okay, so let's do this. So all I am doing is, as you can see, I already traced my shapes, right? So I kind of already decided what color I would be painting each shape or each area. So all I am doing is creating a similar color with watercolor and painting that area in. Okay, so let me actually bring this up so that you can see more of my table, my watercolor stuff. And you can see how frequently I'm like cleaning out my brush and doing all the color mixture and whatnot. So here's my container. And so I decide what color I want for my background based on the elements inside. So the cup is going to be blue. This is going to be vanilla. This is going to be strawberry. And this is going to be chocolate, kind of fudge in both. This is a little like wooden spoon, chocolate little straws or whatever those types of cookies are called. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this first because I don't know what color I want my background exactly yet, and I think I want to see the colors in the subject before choosing a color for my background. All right, so let's do this. I think a great color for the vanilla is going to be a mixture of New Gamboge and raw sienna. So this is New Gamboge right here, which is a warm yellow. And raw sienna is a light kind of golden beigey brown. Okay. Going in pretty watery. I'm just going to start filling in the vanilla section in. And I do want to create soft wet on wet effects. So I want to work quickly, and I also want to make sure that I'm dropping in a little bit of another color while that initial layer is still wet to develop a little bit of a range of values. Just a slight range of values. Okay, so strawberry. I'm going to do alizarin crimson for my strawberry. And maybe it's a little bit too bright with just plain alizarin, so I'm going to just add a little bit of this New Gamboge plus raw sienna. And I think this will be a softer pink, a little bit more of a muted pink. And I'm going to allow the watercolor to just seep in, the different watercolor shapes or sections to seep into each other. Wherever it happens, I'm just going to let it, instead of trying to keep everything super clean and controlled. See how it's bleeding right there? Because the vanilla section was still wet. I'm just letting it do its thing. And anytime I want to soften the color, I just go in with a clean and slightly damp brush and do some lifting. I'm going to drop in a tiny bit of alizarin plus this mixture that I was just using for the vanilla. Create a little bit of a variety in hue in the strawberry. There you go. Okay. So now I'm going to do the chocolate fudge thing. For the chocolate, I'm going to be using burnt umber, and maybe I'm going to add a tiny bit of ultramarine blue into the burnt umber just to darken it a little bit more. Let me see, activating the burnt umber. A little bit of water in my brush. Okay, so chocolate fudge. I want some chocolate ice cream myself. Sounds pretty good about now. Maybe I leave a little highlight section in my chocolate fudge shapes just because this way I can make it look a little bit shinier, like more of a moist look. See that little highlight section that I left? It just happened organically. I didn't plan it. I'm gonna paint in this chocolate fudge down here. Leave a little highlight section or two. And I think I missed a little vanilla ice cream section right there under the fudge. So I removed all of that color from my paintbrush bristles, the brown. And I'm just going to make a little bit more of the vanilla color that I was using before. Just going to carefully paint that section that I missed before in. Okay. And if I want to do lifting, just remove that paint from your paintbrush bristles and you can go in and use the clean and only slightly damp bristles of your brush to do a little bit of absorbing. And you can see how you add more dimension into areas by just developing a little bit of a range of values there, because sometimes we darken things too much and or the paint just expands way past the area that you want it. And so the lifting technique is a great way to add dimension into areas that you kind of flattened out by accident. Okay, cool. So that's enough. I think I'm fine with that brown, little range of browns that I've created. I'm gonna go ahead and use the same brown to paint in no, I need more paint. That's a little bit too watery. So I add more paint into my mixture. I need to be careful with these very small shapes when I'm painting them. But I want these chocolate kind of straws to be vanilla, chocolate. So that's why I skipped a little section there. I'll be painting the other section in just a bit. Something else that I can paint right now is a little spoon. I want the spoon to be a very similar color to the vanilla ice cream. So going back to the raw sienna, remember what I was mentioning before about repeating colors to bring harmony into the piece? So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm seeing how I can repeat colors as I'm moving along. Okay, awesome. Cool. So these are very small shapes, so I'm going to allow these to dry before painting in the other section in between. What I'm going to paint right now is the cup. And I want my cup to be like a cooler blue. Let's see. Not that cool. So this is a Prussian blue plus a little bit of ultramarine. Okay. I'm gonna leave one white section. I want like blue and white stripes here in the cup. One blue, one white. One blue, one white. And I'm painting all of this from imagination. These are not the colors that were there in that reference photo. And for this one, I also combined photos, by the way. So the photo that I used as loose inspiration for this cup of ice cream, I'm doing a little bit of lifting in the middle section to bring this section forward. The reference photo that I used for this one, adding a little bit of Payne's gray into the blue to darken it. Essentially, the reference photo just had the kind of a plain brown paper cup with the two ice cream scoops, and they were vanilla ice cream with some, I think it's honey on top of that ice cream. It's not chocolate. And the photo didn't have the spoon and it didn't have the cookies. The cookies I took from another reference photo. The spoon I just added from imagination. And the cup design I also brought in from imagination because I really like striped stuff. So I just created this cup design because I wanted to bring in a striped blue cup. Okay. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to paint in the other little stripes here. Just adding more raw sienna into the mix. And I'm painting those in. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Yeah. Adding those darker values can really help make things pop, give them more of a 3D look. Creating that sense of three-dimensional form and depth is all about value at the end of the day. It's all about creating those lights, midtones, and darks. I kind of, because that brown was still not completely dry, can you see what happened there? I kind of lifted up some brown by accident. I'll fix it later. Sometimes it's very important to allow things to dry completely before trying to go in and fix them when you're working with watercolor. All right, so I think that it would be cool to create either a light gray or darker gray background. And I think I like the light gray look maybe for this side and then create a darker gray look for some sections over here. So I'm gonna do my favorite gray color mixture, which is ultramarine blue and either burnt sienna or burnt umber. I'm gonna make some of that gray over here. And I'm gonna be painting my background in with this gray. I'm gonna try to make it lighter though in this section. So in order to make it lighter, I'm just gonna make sure to go in with this gray in a pretty watered down state. So I'm just adding in water into the mix. And I'm gonna go in and paint this entire background section with an irregular edge. I'm just gonna be careful with the little ice cream truck over here. I don't want to paint it in with gray. And I'm just gonna work around these elements and leave, maybe not here up against the ice cream truck, but everywhere else around this, I want to leave like an irregular edge. So I'm just gonna quickly paint this in and move, like wiggle my paintbrush to create an irregular edge. Connecting the background over here. Just going down. Taking a little bit more paint at a time. Just filling this area in as quickly as I can so that I don't get those sharp defined edges. This paper is pretty nice. pretty forgiving. It allows me to reactivate my color easily so that I'm not left with those edges in my background wash. Now I'm just cleaning up edges, changing some of that shape that maybe I don't like, and going deeper or closer to my elements here, because sometimes when I'm painting in the wash, I'm working so quickly that some of my edges are a little bit messy. You know, like there's a little section of white paper in between the background shape and the whatever element. So after painting in that background quickly, I then go in and give myself the time to clean up those edges if I need to. All right. I'm going to drop in a little bit of a darker gray down here just to start creating a little bit of a cast shadow effect under the little ice cream cup. So I'm going to make more of this gray, add in more ultramarine blue and more of my burnt umber. And I'm just going to go in and drop in a thicker version of my gray that I just used down here below the cup and to the left. So in this case, the light is hitting this from the right. So the cast shadow is opposite to the right on the bottom left. Let me grab myself a towel. Kind of got a drop of water over here. Okay, cool. So I'm just doing a little bit of softening of this edge. Awesome. So what am I missing here? Okay, so I'm missing a little bit of a light gray value in the white sections of the cup, the little lip section here, and the white stripes. If I leave these stripes completely white, it's going to look very flat. So I want at least a little bit of a light gray value, especially along the left edge and the right edge here, especially on the left, because if the light source is hitting this object from the right, then there would be more shadow, generally speaking, in this left section of the cup. So I'm going to use the same gray that I was just using. Oh, you know what I want to do before this shadow section dries? I'm going to add more of this blue mixture on my palette, just Prussian blue plus some ultramarine blue. And I'm just going to pop some of this in here into the cast shadow while it's still wet. Give it a little bit of a colorful look. Okay, awesome. So back to my white areas. Back to my ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Got a little drop of water here. Okay, so a light gray value. Here, and I'm going to extend it a little bit more on the lip as well, in this area too. And over here, I think this little section is supposed to be pink, so I'll paint that in just a bit. Right here under the ice cream, maybe just a little bit over here on this edge, so that I can give the cup a little bit of roundness. Softening the edges with a clean and slightly damp brush. Softening that edge. Okay, cool. I'm gonna paint in this little section right here, which is actually ice cream. So I'm gonna create more of that pink that I was using before, which is alizarin crimson plus some new gamboge and some raw sienna. And I'm just gonna paint that section in. All right, cool. I'm gonna paint that little section with maybe a dark vanilla color. So because if that is vanilla ice cream right there, I don't want it to be like the cup. I think that would actually be vanilla ice cream. So I'm going to make more of that vanilla ice cream color on my palette, which is raw sienna plus new gamboge. But I'm going to add some burnt umber into it to darken it because that would be in shadow. So by adding some of my darker brown, I'm going to create a darker value of this same color so that it looks like vanilla ice cream, but it's just in shadow. Okay, great. Awesome. So that's it for the watercolor in this piece. Oh yeah, I was gonna fix that little section here. So I'm gonna switch to my smaller size 3 round brush. I'm just gonna use some of my burnt umber. By now it's completely dry, so I can go in and fix that little mistake with a little layer of burnt umber. And I'm just gonna paint that whole thing again so that I don't have any weird patches. Okay, there you go. I think watercolor is always going to look darker when it's wet. So there's that. Maybe it looks a little bit darker than the other stripes right now because that section is wet. So I'll come back to see what it looks like later after it's dried to see if I need to fix anything. For now, I'm going to move on to the opposite page and get to work on that. Okay, cool. Let's do this. Back to my size 14 round brush. And I'm going to use my cooler blue with the ultramarine in it. And I'm going to start painting in the blue sections in the ice cream truck. If you guys have any questions at all, let me know. And start painting the ice cream truck. And see, I want this section blue. The ice cream truck is going to be blue and pink. And gray. So I can repeat colors in both pages. And this is the first spread where I kind of draw one of the subjects or objects in both, like a bit of it in both pages. It's the first one where I do that in the sketchbook. But I love doing that. I have other sketchbooks where I do that a lot. It really helps bring both pages together where you have a little bit of overlapping or one same subject or object taking up a little bit of the other page. I think I'm going to paint this blue as well. I'm going to have to draw those letters with a darker color in my next phase of my process. So how are you guys doing? How's your week going? Gonna do alizarin crimson again for my pink. add a little bit of New Gamboge and a little bit of raw sienna so that the pink is similar to this one. Hey Sam, nice to see you. Welcome. Okay, I think this is going to be a similar-ish pink. Just muted my alizarin crimson a little bit with the raw sienna and added a little bit of New Gamboge so that it's similar to the pink in my ice cream. Welcome, welcome. Okay. So pink here. And pink here. And after I'm done with the watercolor for this one, I need to allow it to dry completely. And then I can start with the colored pencil, which is the final stage of the process. I'm going to paint in the door and this part here with pink. And I'll do the door handle with maybe more of a golden color. Can repeat the kind of a vanilla color for this section there. I think that'll look nice. Again, I'm painting this from imagination. I am thinking of repeating colors that I've already used over here and sticking to that color palette, if you will, that I've already kind of planned for myself since the beginning, since that first colored pencil part of the process where I traced over my line work. Okay, let's see. So the wheels are going to be dark gray. That is going to be, I don't know, I could make it a gold as well. I could make the center part of the wheels gold. Maybe I'll make the bumper pink or blue. And yeah, I'm gonna do this section over here pink as well. And then I need to repeat the golden colors. I need to add some of that into this page. Need more alizarin crimson into this. Okay. Make the bumper pink as well. Maybe the license plate can be gold, golden color, yellowish color, so that I can repeat that yellow. Sam, I'm using a size 14 brush. Just a size 14. I also have this smaller one. This one is also a size 14, but I haven't used it. And I also have this smaller one, which is a size 3. And sometimes I'm bringing it in for very, very small shapes or little areas where I need more control. But that's it, just the size 14. And by the way, all of the brushes that I use are synthetics, and my brushes are always pretty affordable. When it comes to my watercolor supplies, the most important supply that I need to invest money in because it makes all the difference is the paper. Then it's my paint, then it's my brushes. So, in other words, if I need to save cash, I'm going to save it when I'm buying my brushes, not on my paper, because the paper is very important. It affects the process, it affects the end results. But all of my brushes are synthetics and they're very affordable. This brush is from a brand called Royal and Langnickel, and you can find this brush at blickartsupplies.com for something ridiculous like $5 or something like that. I think even less. So, and I've had this for years, literally years. Um, Probably like 5 or 6 years, and I'm still using it. I do not have any natural hairbrushes in my studio. I don't think it's necessary at all to have natural hairbrushes, so synthetics are getting better and better every year as well. And I'm pretty hard on my brushes. I am not the type of person that likes making time to like condition brushes, and I don't properly care for my brushes. So for me, if I can save on my brushes, I just look for quality, a good level of quality for a good price when it comes to my brushes, and that'll do it. Like that'll make me happy. Just in case you're wondering. But yes, I'm just painting in my wheels here with grays, and I'm going to allow that to dry so that I can paint in the wheel with a darker gray, which is essentially the same gray, just a more saturated, darker version of that gray. I'm going to paint this gray as well. But maybe I'll drop in a little bit of blue so that I can paint the background gray as well. I was very confused the other day. I think it was like a month ago. I received this question on YouTube. I can't even remember what video it was on, but this person just couldn't believe that I'm using like student grade brushes. The person said that no student grade brushes would do that kind of effect or something like that. But no, my brushes are pretty cheap brushes. And yes, I have no natural hair brushes in my studio. I'm gonna absorb some of this. Sam, I use a mixture of brushes from different brands. Let me show you which are the like main ones that I use in my tutorials. Give me just one sec. And I'll show you. Some of them are Princeton brushes, some of them are Winsor & Newton. And I have a couple from this brand, Royal and Langnickel. Give me one sec. Okay. Hold on. So most of the brushes that I use in my tutorials are either from Princeton's Aqua Elite line, and I got this set of 4 brushes on Amazon for, I think, I don't know, maybe like $30-$40 for 4 brushes, which isn't bad at all. I also have a couple of brushes from Princeton's Neptune brand, which is also a synthetic. This is a large mop brush that I use for large background areas in a lot of my tutorials. And this brush, I think, was like $30, $35. I bought it like 5 years ago or something. So I can't tell for sure like what's the price of this brush right now, but I got it via Amazon. And this is probably like one of my most expensive brushes, which just goes to show I don't invest very much in brushes at all. So as I said, this was like around $34 when I got it, which was like 5 years ago. And then these, it was this one, and this one in the same set that I got via Amazon. And you can still find the same four brush set from this Aqua Elite series of Princeton brushes on Amazon. And as I said, this is like $40, I think. I got these like 2 years ago, maybe a little bit less, maybe a year and a half ago. But again, this is like $40 for four brushes. So that's a very good price, you know? And in terms of the other brushes that I like and use quite a bit, I have like 5 or 6 brushes from this line, the Cotman line, 111 Cotman line from Winsor and Newton. These are longer handled brushes, which I also get via Amazon. And I get this one I got individually, but these two I think came as part of a set with I think another one. But I have a few of this same line and they're pretty good. They're very good. Okay? And I also have a couple from this one from Princeton as well, which is their Snap line. And these are also pretty affordable brushes, very durable. I've had these Snap brushes for 5 years maybe. And I need to share this with you. There is this set of brushes from this Chinese brand called Magritte that I got via Amazon, and these are like multimedia brushes. And I kid you not, this was a set of 7 brushes, and I got these at like a ridiculous price. I think it was like $7 or something like that. I don't even remember because sometimes I use Amazon US and sometimes I use Amazon Mexico. But and unfortunately, the last time that I checked, this set is not available on Amazon anymore, at least not Amazon US. But when you type Magritte, like the artist Rene Magritte, Magritte, Magritte watercolor set, you're gonna see this set of 7 brushes, and they came in this beautiful, let me show you. They come in this beautiful box with a whale. And I think when I got these, you could choose if you wanted like a light blue or a pink. But these have been so good. Like I was really pleased with these brushes and they're so cheap. I've had these for years, and the only reason why I don't use them so much anymore in my tutorials that I share is because people ask me what paintbrushes I'm using, and since they're not available on Amazon anymore, I can't tell you where to go get them. So, unfortunately, I haven't been able to find these, at least not in the last year. I couldn't find these on Amazon anymore. But these are synthetics. They can be used for gouache or watercolor. I've had them for at least a couple of years or 3 years, and I really, really love them for painting with watercolor. So there you go. Those are my main brushes that I use, and they're all pretty affordable. If you have any more questions, let me know. I always like saying that having Michael Jordan's shoes is not going to make you a great basketball player. You know, I think a lot of beginners especially think that if you have the best everything, it's automatically going to make you a good painter or a good artist. But in my opinion, that is not the case. It's more so your skills and your understanding of art fundamentals and all of these things that are way more important than having the most expensive everything. I always really admire artists that are able to use what they have to create great art. Okay, so I'm going to start painting in the gray areas. And you're going to see how I already did some hatching in the darker shadow areas with my colored pencil. I'm going to add a little pop of color there in the shadow area. While the gray is still wet, add in a little bit of, you hear a plane is flying by. I'm going to use a little bit of new gamboge and raw sienna for a little light effect there. And I'm going to do the same for the other windows. Okay. I need to work quickly so that I can drop in my raw sienna and new gamboge for that light effect. Rinsing out that gray from my paintbrush bristles, grabbing some of my raw sienna plus new gamboge, and dropping it in. A little bit more over here. There we go. I'm going to absorb. You can see this water pooling over here. I'm just going to go in with a clean and slightly damp brush to absorb some of that excess water and paint so that I don't have splotches. Sometimes if you leave that puddle, you'll have little splotches left behind. So you can always use your paintbrush as a little absorbent sponge to help you fix areas. Okay. I'm going to create a darker gray. And I'm going to start painting in this shadow area under the bus. Not a bus, a truck. The truck. And I want to keep those irregular organic edges around the washes that I am painting in. Let me know if you have any questions at all. I'd be happy to help. Okay, cool. I'm going to start painting in the grill. Is it called the grill? If you know, I'm terrible with like car part names, but let me know if you know what it's called. This part here. I'll redraw the lines later with colored pencil in the third phase. And I want to do these sections gray as well. Should probably change to my smaller brush and pushing my luck with that larger brush. Okay. I'm gonna paint the license plate with gray as well. And I'm gonna do, switching on back to my size 14 round. I think I'm gonna do New Gamboge and Burnt Sienna for a little sign, or maybe Raw Sienna with, yeah, I like this in brown. So that I can repeat the brown. I haven't repeated the brown or the chocolate on this page. At least I can repeat a similar color. And switching on back to my smaller brush to paint the little handle for the door. Okay, continuing with my smaller brush, I'm gonna do New Gamboge plus Raw Sienna for the little lights. And I need to paint in the wheels. So by this point, the shadow section on the concrete shadow section is already pretty dry. So I shouldn't have too much bleeding if I paint in the wheels. I'm gonna do my gray color mixture that I've been using all along, which is ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And the wheels, I'm gonna paint pretty dark. I'm gonna switch on over to my smaller brush again. I want a darker gray for the wheels. So in order to make the gray darker, I just add in more ultramarine blue and more burnt umber onto my palette and use the same color mixture in a thicker state. Let's see if I have any questions, any comments. Laura, how is your mushroom house piece going? That sounds so cool. So I brought these two shapes together, the front of the wheel or the side of the wheel, depends how you see it, and this section of the wheel, I just painted those in at once. Even though there is certainly a plane change there, I'm going to separate them out with a second layer after it has dried, after that has dried. Just paint that in here as best as I can. All right. I'm going to do a very, very light watered down gray for this section here. If you want your gray, like if you're using the same color in shapes or areas that are next to each other and you want the value to look different, just make sure that you use it either in a more watered down state or in a thicker state, and that'll create a different value. And if things dry and the value inside and outside of that shape, like in the two shapes or two areas, is very similar, then all you have to do is paint over one of them to make that section darker, and then the values will be different. Okay, so the entire bus has been painted, the washes are in, and I'm thinking what color I should use for the sky section. I'm thinking a muted blue, and maybe this section can be gray. Wow, a kid just screamed. I don't know if you heard that, but a little girl just screamed. At least I think it was a little girl. Okay, so I'm making more of my gray with my blue and brown combo. And I just want to paint in this section here all the way to this line that I created in pencil. I don't know if you can see that, but I created a little line there. So I'm going to paint that in a lighter gray, or at least lighter than this, lighter than the shadow. So how do I do that? Again, I make sure to go in with a gray that is more watered down than this gray. And if, as I am painting it, it doesn't look light enough, I just remove that paint from my paintbrush bristles and I go in with just a tiny bit of water in my brush to lighten it. So I remove that paint from my paintbrush bristles, remove that excess water. Right here, I'm just lightening it in some sections, doing a little bit of lifting, fixing edges. And you can still see the difference between the cast shadow and the other like street section above it or below it. Okay, so finally I'm going to create the light blue, but I don't want to go in with this blue for my sky because that is not a very natural blue for the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in with ultramarine blue plus a tiny bit of my brown, which I'm using burnt umber right now, to mute it a little and make it look a little bit more natural. If I just go in with the plain ultramarine blue or the Prussian blue, it's not going to look very natural. It's not a natural blue for a sky. So by just muting it down with either a gray or a neutral, it's going to look a little bit more natural. And I want to go in with a light version of this color. So just paint in a little bit of color. Let me create a little bit of a cloud effect here and there. And I'll be all done with this part of my process. I don't think I should create a cloud effect because, I don't know, I would imagine buildings or something, houses maybe being behind this ice cream truck, not so much like a sky. But I can create clouds by doing a little bit of lifting. And call this one done. Okay, cool. So I now have to allow this to dry completely before doing anything else. Oh yes, I was going to darken the section of the wheel. right here, just to separate out what's what in the wheel, I thicken up my gray color mixture by just adding more brown and blue into it. And then whichever section I want to make darker, I just go over it with another layer. See how it's now darker than this section over here? So you visually kind of separate those parts of the wheel out by just developing a darker value in one of the sections. And do the same thing for this back one, which is barely visible. And this section here. All right, awesome. So part 1 and 2 is done for this spread, and I look forward to finishing this one up later after everything has dried, bringing my colored pencils back in and adding detail and darkening areas and defining other areas, etc. So yeah, this was fun, you guys. I'm gonna leave now because I've been here for almost 2 hours. But thank you guys so much for joining. Actually, if you guys have any last questions, let me know. And I'll hang out for a couple more minutes to see if there's anything that I can help out with before leaving you. But I look forward to making more of these live streams here on YouTube. These are always super fun, and I love interacting with you guys in this live situation. So definitely stay tuned for more of these. And if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure that you do, because I'll be letting you guys know, making a post when, like the day before or a couple of days before doing a live stream, so that you can have a heads up and know when I'm doing one of these. My stories or like that. Send a message to so people see that. So, highly on Instagram, Erica _ I think. Thank you today. Great. I see one more question. Number 3. Nice. Pens were great. Very cool. Hearing from you, seeing your work and cheering you on. And anyway, I'm glad that you Sam. This was fun. Thank you guys for joining. I wish you a wonderful rest of your week. For more of these sketchbook spreads in upcoming, stay tuned. So if you have any questions, if you have any topic, either or new series on that you would like from me, go ahead and leave them in my videos. I'm listening to always read every single. It takes me like a week to read them, but I always much. Okay. Full rest of your week and talk to you soon. Enjoy your